So Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, is warning that the end of the world as we know it is on the horizon. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. And when that guy gives you a warning, you should probably listen, given that they have $20 trillion or something under management. They are the people who control the world. All right. And so what he's saying is really scary, and no one's listening, and I think it connects right back to the Great Reset, and we're going to talk about that. But first, we're going to talk about Russel Brand's situation, because he is facing prison time, and he's now spoken out about the accusations that have been levied against him from 20 to 26 years ago or whatever. But again, as soon as we're done with that story, we're going to get into the tariff situation, the markets collapsing, and what Larry Fink is saying, which is a way bigger deal than the tariffs. So usually when I put two stories in a video, they somehow relate. Okay, now we're going to talk about the Russel Brand case right now, because Russel Brand has responded to the criminal charges that have been filed against him in the UK. He is facing prison time. This is a really, really big deal. And I feel like it's not getting enough attention, because when this first happened, when this smear campaign happened, we know how this originated. We know it's manufactured. This did not start with accusers going, you know what, I finally got the courage to come out and say my piece. That's not what happened. Journalists literally cooked this up. They read his books. They found any of the girls that he knew from back then that he had openly admitted to having relationships with. He questioned them about, or they questioned them about this. They went and pretended that they had admissions from many other girls about things that they told them. They cooked the books, went back. They're like, well, you said that this was consensual. Well, we're hearing that he did this to a lot of other women, and it definitely was not consensual. Have you considered that maybe it was like not what you thought it was? Like, this is what they did. These women came forward and talked about that. Now, these are 26-year-old cases, and this guy is, if this guy goes to prison, and if you think that he won't, if you think they won't put him in prison, I disagree. Okay. Now, the other story we're going to talk about has to do with global economics, because all of this leads back to the Great Reset and what they were trying to do starting in 2020, reshape the world. And some of the big voices that kept them from being successful, one of the main ones was Russel Brand. He came up huge during that period of time, and he is facing the repercussions of that right now. Now, I want to let him speak for himself first, and then we'll get into more of it. And then after that, we're going to look at some things that Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, said today that are very notable, because I think that we're headed towards something very terrifying, which was originated 5 years ago when COVID happened, and in my opinion was part of a larger plan to reshape the world. And that had to do with collapsing the American dollar, destroying our economy, creating a world where there is no global superpower. Okay. Like, just as a preview of what we're going to get into over there, this has always been my hypothesis. I think that when the big guy won in 2016, they realized that a single person who kind of beats the system and gets into office had the ability to derail all of these global initiatives that they had been working on. And they're like, we can't be exposed to a single person derailing all of the ways that we string pull around the world. And the problem is that the American government has too much power. We need to crush these guys. And that way they can be on the same level as everybody else or lower. We don't really care, but we won't be prone to getting usurped by a single election like we just did. Right. Then in 2020, they did whatever happened there, man, whatever happened there. But they also printed $10 trillion of money. $10 trillion is what central banks printed during that period of time. And we are facing total collapse. Total collapse. We're going to be paying $1 trillion in interest alone in the next few years, just on what we owe. Okay. Our interest payments on our debt are going to be larger than our defense budget. Okay. Just try to, stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Anyway, if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, I would appreciate it if you would do that. But let's get into what Russel Brand says, and let's go.
Hello there, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russel Brand. And how long will I be free for? And I'm going to address as best I can the charges of sexual assault and rape in the UK that have been made against me. what I feel when looking at it with my heart as open as I can manage is that knowing that there are people that to whatever degree and for whatever reason willing to participate in a venture of this nature means that I recognize that I must have in some ways caused harm. In those Gideon hedonistic days, those ludicrous dark days, those days where I was part of a culture that then seemed to warmly applaud and celebrate Epicureanism, the relentless pursuit of pleasure, a kind of casual godlessness, the kind of godlessness that leads to the erection, forgive the word, of false gods everywhere.
Hey, and let me ask you guys this. Since we're going to be talking about BlackRock later, and I'm certain I will bring this up again, but how come no one ever had any problems with what he was doing back then? How come no one had any problems with Diddy when he was doing his things back then? Okay, same answer. The reason Diddy's in a prison cell and the reason why they're trying to put him in a prison cell is because he crossed those guys. Okay, Diddy did. We'll talk about that later. Russell Brand did, and now facing the same fate. These people do not play around. They don't care what you do as long as you are following the line that they have put in front of you.
1 minute, this is your idol. The next minute, this is your idol. Fall down, bow down, and worship at their corporate and consumer altars. When I was in that world, I must have been captured by a kind of darkness. But remember, for 22 and a half years, I've been drug and alcohol free, and I have a pretty good memory of accounts. And I also know that I am a person that very much respects the idea of consent. And I pray that over the coming months, when I participate with full volition and total cooperation in any legal inquiry, we'll get to see how the justice system operates in the United Kingdom. The allegations, just so you know, the charges, in fact, relate to events between 1999 and 2004. You probably won't even have heard of me until, I don't know, 2005, 2006. You know, so it means that when you heard of me...
I didn't even think about that. He wasn't even famous then, really. Like, not like globally famous. That's how far back these guys went.
These things are already alleged to have taken place. So all the time that I was married to Katy Perry, all the time that the Me Too movement was happening, all the time, remember when I was talking openly about the coronavirus and the corruption during the coronavirus era? It's interesting to me that once I was on the radar of the deep state and many of their affiliates within media, because the media and the government are not separate entities. The media and the institutions of power are not separate entities. We know that now. We'll start off by looking at the United Kingdom. There is time.
He can't say what I can say. Okay, he can't publicly say that the journalist cooked this up, because he's going to have to answer for this in court. And so anything he says, he has to keep that in mind. And so if he just comes out and he's like, didn't you guys hear about how these allegations came about? Did you hear the girls who came out and said that the journalist went to them and they said that, this everything was consensual? And then they cooked up this thing over here and then came back to them and misrepresented what had been said and then created a victim out of this person, then took this victim who was created by the journalist and went back to the other ones and then used that to create the victims. Think about it like this. If you're a girl and you had a girl too, okay, like you're a man, pretend you're not a man, okay? Pretend you are the more delicate of the two genders in terms of physicality. And, and you've had whatever sexual relationship with a person and it's like, oh, remember how you guys did that thing? And, so did you ever hear it? Do you ever like choke you or do any of those things, whatever? And that's like not uncommon at all. And you think that it was a totally consensual thing that you were involved in because you liked it or whatever. But then you find out, oh yeah, well, you know what? He was doing that and violently choking women unconscious. So did you never experience anything like that or whatever? You're going to be like, whoa, it's just going to completely reframe how you see everything. And then all of a sudden you're a victim. You're like, well, he did choke me also. Are you kidding me? Like if you thought that this guy, did this to people unwillingly and you were like, oh, maybe I was just confused all along about whether or not I was into this or whatever. It's like the idea that you can't create accusers, without them being corrupted, you just kind of trick them. That's absurd to me because you absolutely can.
Time and evidently resources to look at alleged incidents, in my case, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And by the way, I don't believe in that statute of limitations stuff. I think if someone committed a crime 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if a crime was committed, the person should be held accountable. Justice. I believe in justice. I believe in integrity. I believe in truth. Why? Because I believe in God. I believe that we're here to love one another. But I don't believe the media believe that. And I don't believe the institutions in democracy in the United Kingdom are acting like truth, freedom, and the sanctity of the human spirit are a priority right now. Yeah, what do you like? I became a Christian, preempting that charges would appear from deep history. I acted hedonistically, knowing that in retrospect it would all pay off.
Yeah. So he's a good person. Bottom line. Even when he was acting like a hedonist, he's a good person. You could tell, man. This is not a guy who wants to take things from people. He doesn't get off on the power like Diddy. Okay, this is a different kind of person, and man, I hate this kind of thing. I actually have nothing to add to that. I just wanted him to be able to say his piece. Now, speaking of the Great Reset and the Masters of the Universe, let's talk about BlackRock CEO telling us that the end of the world is on the horizon, and everybody just being like, okay. So this is Larry Fink right here, and he is the CEO of BlackRock. You may remember BlackRock from such stories that I've been mentioning recently related to Diddy, whereby everybody who was asking themselves, how did Diddy do all of these criminal things for 30 years and only now ended up in a prison cell? And I said, because he sued Diageo and cost them $20 billion in market capitalization, and BlackRock being one of the largest shareholders in that company, they decided to take their vengeance on Diddy and take everything that he had and then throw him in a prison cell. So that's what kind of power you're dealing with over here. So when this guy, arguably the most powerful or one of the most powerful people in the world, BlackRock has, I think, like $20 trillion under management. When he starts telling the world things about the future of markets, you should probably listen. And he has been saying some pretty shocking things in the last week that I feel like everybody should know about, one of which would basically be the end of the United States as we know it. I remember something else that people said a few years ago, which I feel like might connect back to this, where right now everybody's looking at tariffs and they're going, oh my gosh, this is just a total market collapse due to and I'm like, guys, this is definitely secondary to what Larry Fink is talking about. Now, you guys may remember the Great Reset. You know, no one's really talking about it right now because everybody feels like we beat those guys, right? You know, we beat them like for now, but that doesn't mean that the things that they implemented back then are not coming to fruition now. Just because they didn't get, global vaccine passports implemented doesn't mean that the broader plan that they had implemented is not on its way to fruition. One of those things being the collapse of the American economy so that there is no global superpower and they can basically rule by controlling all of the leaders of all of these different countries. Like, you guys do understand that that is 100% what they were trying to do. They were trying to make it to where there is no global superpower country and they control the leaders of all the countries that collectively have the power that they have. Like, you could go over to France and look at Macron as your perfect example, or go to Canada and look at Trudeau and go, do these guys really seem to be the person that's running the country? Like, really? Does it really seem like they're in charge? Now, the immediate story about Larry Fink is he's saying that he thinks stocks could go down another 20% and put us into a recession. That's fine, whatever. He also says that he thinks it's more of a buying opportunity than a selling opportunity. Whenever this kind of thing happens, I get excited because I'm like, ooh, cheap stocks that we could buy that are almost certainly going to go back up because knock on wood on the other side. But every time there's some hysterical collapse in the market, you put your money in and then you make money on your money. But, look, this is the much more important part that we're referencing right here. Okay, so Larry Fink says Bitcoin could replace the dollar as the world's reserve currency because of national debt. Okay, I want to read you a little bit of this, and then we're going to go over to this story right here from 5 years ago. Okay, because if you think this is not a controlled demolition of the American economy, you're out of your mind. Okay, you really think that the central bankers don't understand what happens when you print $10 trillion out of nothing? You think of this inflation and all of it is like, oh my gosh, and the national debt, oh my God, we're going to have all these gigantic ballooning payments on the national debt. Oh, they couldn't have seen that coming when they decided to shut the world down and print this much money, okay? But let's start here. Okay, so BlackRock CEO Larry Fink warns that America's rising national debt could threaten the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency, potentially leading to decentralized assets like Bitcoin taking its place. He and Bridgewater's Ray Dalio cautioned that if the U.S. fails to manage its debt, global confidence in U.S. treasuries may collapse, triggering economic instability and a shift towards alternative financial systems. Okay, so if that happens, like, BlackRock owns everything. Okay, like, these guys own everything. They're going to be all right, like, they're going to thrive in whatever version of the economy exists later. And if they rely on being able to pull the strings, then not having a global superpower will make that a lot easier. Okay, with America's national debt sitting comfortably over the $36.2 trillion mark, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink is warning the burden could one day be the reason the dollar is dethroned as the reserve currency. He argues that decentralized currencies like Bitcoin could replace the dollar as worldwide organizations lose faith in national currencies and seek an independent solution. Fink explained his theory in his 2025 letter to shareholders, writing, "The U.S. has benefited from the dollar serving as the world's reserve currency for decades, but that's not guaranteed to last forever. The national debt has grown at 3 times the pace of GDP since Times Square's debt clock started ticking in 1989. This year, interest payments will surpass $952 billion, exceeding defense spending. By 2030, mandatory government spending and debt service will consume all of federal revenue, creating a permanent deficit." Let me read that to you again. Okay, let me read that to you again. By 2030, mandatory government spending and debt service will consume all federal revenue, creating a permanent deficit. If the U.S. doesn't get its debt under control, if deficits keep ballooning, America risks losing that position to digital assets like Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, bulls might see that and go, yippity-doo-dah, okay? But I'm an American, and I go, oh my God, that is absolutely terrifying. So to understand what he's actually saying, the benefits afforded to Uncle Sam by the dollar's dominance in global financial markets is clear, and they form part of the reason why policy out of the White House can afford to be so bullish. These benefits include allowing the U.S. to ride out foreign exchange fluctuations and achieve lower borrowing costs. Many foreign central banks also hold dollar-dominated assets to weather economic shocks and balance their own currency values. The majority of this is held in U.S. treasuries, the very debt that Fink is referring to, with dollar assets making up around 59% of foreign reserves around the world. Okay? But the catch is that foreign governments and central banks must have faith in the currency's creditworthiness. Now, let's go back over here. So remember in 2020 when we shut the world down and everyone was like, everyone was frantically selling all of their stock and, no one knows, like, what's going to happen, dude? What's going to happen? And it's like, oh, don't worry about it. We'll just prop it up by printing $10 trillion. Okay? So this is in March 23rd, exactly 5 years ago, basically. More than 300 basis points in combined interest rate cuts, a tenth of the annual output in central bank stimulus, and $5 trillion of new government spending and credit guarantees. Authorities around the world, biggest economies, are showering cash like never before to limit the damage from the coronavirus pandemic. Okay, so again, if we think about what the absolute most certain outcome of this was going to be, did we have a debt problem already in 2020? Yes, we did. Was this an obvious situation that was going to arise if we just out of nowhere printed another $5 to $10 trillion? Of course. So when 5 years later, suddenly the chickens are coming home to roost, I don't think the world's, smartest economists could have possibly missed this. You have this incredibly shady situation where there's, global coronavirus outbreak. How did it happen? United States, intelligence agencies in conjunction with Anthony Fauci may have sent money over to China where they developed this juiced up coronavirus, which we were supposedly supposed to have. The reason we do this is so we have a vaccine or a cure, but we, curiously don't have one of those. And now we just have to lock the whole world down, And also, don't worry about it. We're not going to tell you this, but you're only really going to die if you're fat, obese, you have diabetes, you have, multiple underlying conditions, but we won't tell you that because we want you to be terrified. But just so we know that, the good people aren't going to die. The ones that we actually care about, they're not going to die. The ones who are actually contributing to society. So that's what was always so shady to me about the AIDS epidemic. I'm like, so you're telling me that this new incredibly suspicious thing, outbreak happens, and it's the only way you can get it is from gay sex or intravenous needle use. You're all, that's convenient. Drug addicts and homosexuals, and this is back in the 80s when they were seen as like lower class citizens. That's convenient. So I don't know, dude. I don't know what any of it means. I know I'm going to start buying stock soon, and I own enough Bitcoin to where I own 1 Bitcoin. That's what I did. I own a Bitcoin. So I might buy some more now, though. So anyway, that's what's what. Love you guys. Subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell. Peace.